you said what inspired me growing up in the hood. Empty lots, broken bottles, pissy mattresses, right? That was outside, but inside there were Architectural Digest magazines, House Beautiful, right?
Yeah.
My mother was an interior designer, so it was always beautiful spaces. Um, and although we lived in economically disadvantaged communities, we were not that, right?
Right.
So
That's a fact.
gainfully employed father who provided and always encouraged entrepreneurship. So I had a paper route from 8 years old to 16 growing up in
Wow.
Harlem, right? I grew up in 1199 Plaza where Jim Dave East is from,
Yep.
Jim Jones, Dame Dash, and I grew up in the same building. So, and those were
Crazy.
co-ops. That was ownership. So there was always this understanding about
right.
ownership. And we lived in a duplex apartment. There was a whole health club downstairs.
Yeah.
This is by the time I left the South Bronx, moved to Harlem, right? So I'm in
Gotcha.
second grade at this time, where I stayed until I was 16 when my father kicked me out. But it was those early inspirations about seeing the community we lived in, saying one day I'm gonna be a billionaire because I'm gonna put a building there.
Wow.
I'm gonna build
Right.
something beautiful. I didn't know it was called development,
Right.
but I learned that it was called development later on. In fact, the guy I met on the set of New York on the cover, a guy named Dan Bythewood, whose cousin Reggie was a writer on the show, became a developer in the early 2000s. So he's the person who gave me my first seat at the table
Got it.
to learn the game, becoming a partner,
Shout out to him, man.
invest in a deal with him. And then in 2017, I started Yoba Development. So I was
Yeah.
able to think about what are the three things that I'm passionate about: real estate, education, media, right?
Yeah.
Storytelling, filmmaking. And right down the block is Steiner Studios, where I was shooting this show called God Friended Me, where across the street, where they have a bunch of migrants
Okay.
right now at the hall, that building was being developed by a friend of mine, that whole block.
Mm.
And I'm shooting this show where I'm playing a real estate developer, and I'm looking at that building thinking, how many people from the projects, which are right over here where we can see through the window,
Yeah.
how many people from these projects walk past these construction sites or this film set and have no idea about either space?
Yeah.
I'm in both of these spaces. And so Yoba Development was born out of that, right? How do I create opportunity for people that look like us to have pathways into these spaces that we know nothing about? So that's where the education piece is. So for me, being able to pursue development opportunities like affordable housing, like in fact, this whole development right here, a friend of mine developed this. He's actually a black developer. He's a black guy that works for.
Message. See, if y'all catch that, we looking at y'all.
But he's
y'all
the
can't see
president.
it.
Yeah,
Okay.
a guy named Kurt Goodrich.
Fire.
That's one of their properties right there. And you know, people don't realize like what does it take to acquire that land? What does it take to finance that? What does it
Yeah.
take to design that, to construct that? How do you have generational wealth when you do that kind of thing? And so for me, it wasn't enough to go after the physical buildings, but how do we bring the people along, right?
Yeah.
If you go back in history, we were the real estate,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely.
As enslaved people.
Message.
Our slogan, builder of people, places, and things, is really rooted in everything I've been discussing,
Yeah.
right? My
Right.
relationship and community, the work I did with City Kids, the work I've done in education, the work I've done in film. And so, long story short, we do have these three verticals. So active real estate development projects, which is a long game, right? You can't just, things don't happen overnight. It might
Yeah.
take 10 years to build
Yeah.
Right.
one development, or 5 years, or 3, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Right.
So there's those things in the pipeline. The education programs, like I said, we ran right in this building, and now we're doing them nationally, or introducing those opportunities nationally, and then creating a bunch of media around in this space. And so, and then started a foundation, which my daughter over there is the president of.
Yeah.
So putting her in a position
Yeah.
that I was in when I was her age,
Right.
right?
Right.
I was the vice president of City Kids Foundation, so I wanted her to have the experience of what is it like to start something from scratch, right? That can scale and really become a legitimate business, and then exposure to all the things
Yeah.
that I'm involved with, which is why she
got-
was with